We are jumping back into the Sermon on the Mount. We are going to be tonight in verses 17 through 20 in chapter 5 of Matthew. Really key passage.
Yep.
We've studied the Beatitudes, salt and light were the last couple of weeks, answered the question of who we are and what we're doing. Tonight's passage, Matt, you've talked about as being massively important to what Jesus is doing in his entire sermon.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the Sermon on the Mount is a bunch of vignettes, a bunch of different sections that were kind of put together. But if you were to take these verses out of his sermon as if they were something separate entirely, it would lose its entire meaning and its entire punch because it's so important.
Yeah, this is the hinge, is what you've said. Verse 20 specifically, you've said and taught before, this is the hinge verse of what Jesus is doing.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. You talk about that idea too of what happens before verse 20, Jesus is doing something, and then after verse 20, basically from here on out, what he's doing.
It's just like we talked about last week. We answered the question, who are you and what are you doing here? Well, everything in the Sermon on the Mount that comes before verse 20 is answering the question about who are you? It's all identity focused. And then after verse 20, it's all what are we doing here? How do we live as citizens in God's kingdom? So it's really the hinge of the sermon.
Identity related and then really behavior related as a result from that.
Right.
And you obviously have made some really neat observations of kind of the Pharisees, the context that Jesus would have been preaching this to.
Right.
The Pharisees would have had an argument for how you get to righteousness, that Jesus is really flipping the tables on them.
Right. Now remember, the Pharisees were really adamant about how people should observe the law and how strictly it should be practiced. And Jesus came, and we'll talk about, you've heard it said, but I tell you this. And so he's not coming to abolish the law, as he says, but he's come to fulfill it, come to complete it. And essentially, he's wanting us to understand that the law is not the source of righteousness. It is the course of righteousness. That's what Dallas Willard says in one of his books.
Wow. He says that.
It's a great quote.
I think I have a t-shirt that says that.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. We should make them. We should make Renovate t-shirts that say, I even forgot what your quote
The
was.
law is not the source of righteousness, it's the course of righteousness. The Pharisees flipped it. They said the law is the source of righteousness.
That's how you are righteous because you do the law. Right. And Jesus says, whoa. That's not, so he really
You misunderstood the purpose of the law.
I love that.
Yeah.
Man, I hope tonight is just a really sweet blessing. And I hope that you dig in deep to that, that meat. If there was one question that this passage is answering, right? If this is going to answer a question, what do you think the one question tonight these group leaders and groups should be kind of thinking in the back of their mind?
I think we're all wondering, am I doing this faith thing right? I mean, am I following Jesus? Am I doing it well? I mean, that's the question that we all want to know.
Am I on the right track?
Yeah, am I on the right track? And Jesus answers that question in this passage. And if you take some time to look at it, I think the answer to that question is very freeing. It gives us a lot of hope. And it's something that inspires us to be like, man, the kingdom of God is infinitely better than the kingdom of the world that we live in.
I love that. We hope tonight is super sweet and super fruitful for you as you guys jump into the deep end with these 4 verses in the Sermon on the Mount. And then next week, we won't be doing these videos. Matt, you'll just be having to sit by yourself at home. Next week, or you can come to Renovate. We'll be in-person gathering next Wednesday. So join us in person in the sanctuary. Love to worship with you. Matt will be in the balcony somewhere wearing a mask. So we love you guys. See you next week.